Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our February Board of Education meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of the Board of Education meeting, January 12th, 2021?
Motion.
Linda with the motion, second.
Second,
Butch, second. Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report of December 2020?
Motion.
Nicole with the motion, second.
second,
Butch with the second. Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the claims audit report of December 2020?
Motion.
Gina, second.
second,
Thank you, Nicole. And may I have a motion to approve the statement of paid claims, December 20 and January 21?
motion,
Thank you, Butch. Gina, second. All in favor?
aye,
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to our capital project report and Mr. O'Byrne. Hi, Jim.
Hello, good evening, everybody.
Good
This is-
evening.
This is my bond report for February of 2021. On Thursday, February the 11th, there is a scheduled Zoom meeting with the district's architect, BBS, and construction management company, School Construction Consultants, to go over open projects. The goal of the meeting is to close out projects so state aid can commence. Demands need to be placed on the contractors to finish their punch list so final payments can be processed. The building heating systems are checked daily. On Monday, January the 18th, a day schools were closed, the person checking the buildings found the heating pipe fitting came apart in Lakeside Room 59. This caused flooding in several rooms and hallway. District custodial crews responded and cleared up the water. The heating contractor sent personnel in to repair the fitting. The district insurance company was called and a restoration company was brought in. Restoration is currently underway. The district's insurance company will be seeking repayment for costs from the contractor's insurance. Arrow Window does not have an updated delivery for the new windows as of yet. Prior to their arrival, Arrow has requested a location for a 25-foot storage pod at Lakeside in Chatterton to hold the new windows prior to installation. Once the windows do arrive, a timeline will be established for their installation. Arrow has replaced several panels with glass at Lakeside and one complete window at Birch. At Birch and Lakeside, the classroom casework bid documents have been available, with the bid opening scheduled for this Friday, February the 12th, 2021. Several contractors have requested and have been provided a walkthrough of the work sites. Award by the Board of Education is tentatively on March the 9th. This concludes my report for February, and I wish everybody a happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim. You as well. That brings us to good and welfare. Congratulations to Melissa Hughes, nurse at Birch School, on the birth of her son, Oliver Lewis. Congratulations to Anthony India, night custodian at Birch School, on the birth of his son, Cameron John. Congratulations to Kathy Casamano, teaching assistant at Birch School, on the marriage of her daughter, Kristen Casamano, to Anthony Cristiano. And condolences to Jody Scavelli, teacher at Chatterton School, on the passing of her mother, Toby Case. Condolences to Christine Seaman, teacher at Chatterton School, on the passing of her grandmother, Marie Moriali. Condolences to Tracy Colford, teacher at Chatterton School, on the passing of her grandmother, Dorothy Peters. Condolences to Sarah Garahan, daily building substitute at Chatterton School on the passing of her grandmother, Tricia Sedotto. Condolences to Renee Costello, teacher at Lakeside School, on the passing of her mother, Florence Tompkins. And condolences to Daniela Vernice, teacher at Chatterton School, on the passing of her grandmother, Maria Storniola. That brings us to hearing of visitors on items in the superintendent's report. I don't believe we have anyone. And then that brings us to the superintendent's report.
Apparently we forgot to put in the item that said budget presentation number 1. So I'd like to turn it over to Ryan Butler to provide the first of the budget presentations.
Thank you very much, Dr. Palma, and I will just bring up my screen to allow everyone to see it. So I'll share it so everyone will see the presentation. Can everyone see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
All right. So this is another budget presentation for the school district. And we're just starting our budget presentations right now. We're getting familiar with the tax levy calculation now that we have virtually all the components in there. We're looking currently at a levy calculation right now about 2.8%. We're also looking at a very small increase in state aid. There has been a lot of change in our state aid run from the governor that was just posted a couple of weeks ago. There are a lot of questions in there currently, but we will continue to move through those items. And as we move forward, we expect the legislative run, the final budget, to be available to us sometime in early April. We also expect our current $1.5 million appropriated fund balance to stay unchanged at this present time. Here is a summary of our tax levy limit calculation. There's quite a few numbers in here, but it does boil down to an estimated levy calculation you see highlighted there at 2.8%. There are some questions regarding our building aid. Right now it's sitting, you'll see it here in red as an exclusion at $566,000. We are, as Jim had mentioned, about meeting with the contractors, our architects, and our school construction consultant firm in an effort to push the closeout of our current projects. When those projects are then closed out, we can then submit our final cost reports, and then those cost reports get fed in through facilities planning and ultimately appear on our state aid runs. So we are making every effort to go ahead and push those contractors to get their closeout documents in place. Then we could submit all of our final costs and, like as Jim said, begin driving the aid. But for right now, that is the number that we have in our governor's run. A brief update on our projected revenues. These figures, besides the tax levy calculation, have very little fluctuation in them at this present time. These figures will be refined as we move forward through the budget process. And just a brief overview of the process itself. I would like to start hosting meetings virtually, of course, with the building administration as we move forward to get myself familiar with some of the intricacies of the buildings, understand the needs of each specific building itself, and also just to get more familiar with the district as a whole. We will then move forward with more review of the salaries and benefits. We will drill down into our BOCES expenditures and also review current transportation as it may be adjusted based upon special education enrollment. Tomorrow morning, we have our serial bond sale for the construction bonds taking place. And once the bond is sold, we receive the fiscal advisor will provide us a report of the winning bidder, and then the new debt schedule will be refined. We have an estimate in there currently, but that debt schedule then will be confirmed and final, and those numbers will then be flowed through our tax levy calculation. We will continue to review, as I mentioned, the state aid reports. We do expect a lot of change coming through, especially with all the nuances that have come through on the governor's run. But we expect ultimately to see hopefully an increased aid figure on our legislative run, which will come through, as I mentioned, in early April. And finally, we'll continue to review our reserve balances, making sure that they are appropriately funded. And this is a major driver in the fiscal stability of the district, which of course we would like to maintain going forward in light of any new COVID-related costs that still might be coming through. But that is a brief overview of the bond project. Our calendar as we move forward, we'll have continued meetings at the district and building level through the next several weeks. And on March 9th, we'll introduce more of the instructional and facilities related side of the budget as well. Anticipate a budget adoption date on the calendar of April 13, the hearing on May 4, and the overall budget vote and election of board members on May 18. That concludes my presentation, and I will.
Brian, could you go back to page 2?
Yes.
So I just want to highlight a few things for the board. We're building this budget with the intention to continue all the same quality of services, personnel, et cetera, that we've had in prior years. We're building this budget with the idea that the pandemic will not be over when the school year starts. You know, while most adults in education and in the community in general will likely be vaccinated, that will not be the case for children. From you read the same things I do, it is likely that children's vaccinations may not even be available into 2022. So that means we are highly likely to be starting classrooms with spacing kids apart, you know, keeping all that extra furniture out, barriers, masks, that's how our school year will start. We will likely need to transition out of the current form of remote program. The district, it was valiant in its efforts to pay for a very intense remote model for this school year. Many school districts did not do that. And most will not be doing a similar dedicated teachers in a remote model next year. Most school districts, including probably every secondary place, including our secondary school district, has an ability for kids to Zoom into the classroom, watch and listen. And we're moving ahead with the knowledge we cannot fund the full remote program the way it is now. In this, I asked Brian to go back to this first slide because there's some good and bad news in this slide. Our calculation of the tax cap levy, or really our calculation of the most likely maximum tax cap levy right now, is 2.859%. We are hopeful that, as Jim said and Ryan has said, that when we get these projects officially closed out, some of the construction that's been done already, or is at specialist levels, et cetera, that state aid in the form of building state aid will flood. And when that additional money flows to us, what it'll do is it'll lower the tax levy cap, both in its calculation and also in the need for money. So hopefully, before we get to the point of adopting this budget in early April, we'll see that 2.859% number come down over time. And we'll see how far we can get that down so we're minimizing the tax levy. But we're going to do it cautiously because we don't want to be over eager in our anticipation that the building aid will flow in next school year. So that's a balance. It's kind of the good news. The bad news is that meager $83,000 on a $54 million budget. So $83,000 is a lot of money, but not compared to a $54 million budget. That's even likely the best case scenario, because while the legislature usually comes out and supports increases in state aid, and we're hopeful there'll be some of it. The problem with that number is that it also includes the concept of a local adjustment, meaning $1.4 million taken away from our state aid, but replaced with $1.4 million of federal aid. And we all see what's going on in Albany right now, and it's not clear if the final legislation that gets passed in Washington will then supply Albany the money they need to balance that negative adjustment. So there is some risk that this number goes down. I don't know that there's much possibility of it going up substantially. So good news is we are due building aid. That should cut the need down a little bit of the first bullet. But the bad news is the second bullet could even potentially go lower. So we just have to see. Hopefully by the time we get to April, that's all settled out. I think Washington might be settled out by then, and that gives our state time to kind of wrap its head around its own budget between now and then. So that's kind of the good and the bad news about this. Future meetings will be more detailed about the line by lines, about the salary numbers. Again, we're going to project keeping everybody who is working in the buildings so we can have the same amount of staffing as we would have had last year. So that's just things I wanted to highlight about the budget.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Ryan, for the presentation. It's great to have you in our district, and nothing like a lot of time just to get to learn the district before you're thrown into the budget. So thank you for that. Thank you. So I'd like to make a motion to approve items 10A1 through 15.
Motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And then I'd like,
Nancy, just want to highlight
go ahead.
on numbers 8 and 9 are retirements of two of our teaching assistant and a teaching aide. So Catherine Filippi, who is a teaching aide at Lakeside, is going to be retiring at the end of this month. Lori Weiner, teaching assistant also at Lakeside, actually finished up at the end of January. So two midterm retirements.
I hope we could do something at the end of the year.
Yes. Yeah. We've had a lot of mid-year retirements, plus whatever happens in the normal framework of retirements. And hopefully we will be able to celebrate them in some creative way. Because we're not going to be able to most likely do the big meeting like we used to do.
Okay.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve items B1 and 2, D1, 2, and 3, E1 through 5.
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And that brings us to our hearing of visitors, and I know that we do have some.
Okay, Brendan, could you turn on our visitors' microphones and cameras, et cetera?
Yeah, he's doing it.
All right, Dr. Kaplan, we're ready for you.
Okay.
Okay.
I think Maureen, you were here first, so I will turn it over to you.
Well, I will cede my position to Kathy Kralovich. I'll speak second.
I'm sorry?
She's passing to the second slide.
Oh, okay. Katerina, welcome.
Good evening, everybody. I spoke on December's meeting, and tonight I'm going to read a short little paragraph and have my husband explain further what is going on. Firstly, I would just like to ask a simple question. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but I wonder how this beautiful open green space was allowed to be turned into an unsightly, unsafe storage yard in a matter of 3 years.
Wow.
I guess I was really naive to think that the district would consider the feelings of the community and respect the neighborhood and realize what this is doing to the home values of the taxpayers. This is ugly, it's unsafe, and it has to go. And that's it. So.
Yeah, I'd just like to my name is Joseph Kralovich. Just like to specifically talk to Merrick residents. This isn't the only issue this community is working on. We have people separately working on a whole lot of different things. One of them is, as you come in off on Sunrise Highway from Merrick, is Orland and Cohen. They have a building now that's their parking lot that's turned into a dump in the back. It's open to anybody who wants to go in, and it's been tagged by, gang members, whoever. It's being vandalized also. Further down Sunrise Highway, in front of the old tree house, another abandoned building, is a collection of, well, I guess you'd call it tractor trailers. They're just sitting there. We've already had a couple removed. They're being tagged, graffiti. The center of the median on Merrick Avenue, Merrick Road, I mean. Why does that collect all of the dump trucks and different things when they're doing improvements to the road or utilities? For some reason, they think they can park there, tear up the ground and leave. The other day, I was at a Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for an apartment on Babylon Turnpike. And I think it's the building right next door to the lawyer. And he wants to put apartments on the bottom floor. Well, he doesn't keep his property too well right now. So we went there to say, listen, take your garbage cans in at night. You don't have to put them to a cable on the side of the building.
Mr. Kralovich, I just want to respectfully ask you to address the board on the issues that we have some responsibility for.
Yeah, I'm doing that right now. The
share-
commonality between all of these things is urban blight. It's vacant buildings. It's property in disrepair. It's signs of neglect. That's you. That's the school yard on Babylon Turnpike. Okay? On Dobson Avenue. The police were called there several times. We know this from living here. And what happens? You make it harder for us to police our own area. You make it easier for criminals and vandals to go in and go into the minibuses, stand on top of the trailers and fire fireworks off. It's just become out of control. You really want us working on these things. And a lot of the amenities we have in Merrick, you may not realize it, but it's all attributable to people working on these things either separately or through civic associations. So basically, this is just another part of a bigger problem. We didn't single the school out. This is community members trying to get some respect, trying to stop urban blight. This is basically a common game plan. You put your shed in the backyard, you build a building, you put things in the back, you make construction, and then you apply for permits. this is what happens ordinarily. This is what the school did apparently. It's not that the school is immune to the Uniform Code of New York State. It's just that you did the same thing everyone else does, but we don't have any recourse because we can go to the town board and complain, and there's rules. You, on the other hand, have to have the state police itself, and it just doesn't work. So basically, what you did was, you basically have no letter of intent. You didn't tell anybody you were going to be building or putting these things up. You didn't submit any plans. There's no building condition survey. There's no long-range plan for these buildings. There's no architectural plans. There's no proper authorization. There's no public bid. A lot of times people might want to bid on these things. You put out requests for proposals and you get, there's no adherence to the Uniform Code, no building permit, no project authorized by the voters. Sometimes when you go through the building permit process, if the guy next door wants to do this to his house, well, you have recourse. But in this case, no, because you realize that you don't really have to adhere to these things because it's the police, it's the state policing itself. Just one other thing here. Knowing the conflict of interest the state has with itself, there is also, the feeling that this is going to continue and get worse. There are other people working on these issues, and I can give you a whole lot more that, this is just another example.
Mr.
There are
Crowley,
also, one more thing, there's also a 2020 property maintenance code.
in deference to understanding the frustration, I've given you probably 3 times as much as the limit there is. So I'm going to ask you to wrap up in the next 30 seconds, please.
Okay, the Department of State has a program. They actually want to encourage, it's called Section 27 of the Municipal Home Rule Law. It establishes a local government code enforcement program. They really want to give it to the locals, but the locals don't want it. So the next thing we have to do is appeal to our lawmakers.
Okay,
You know what I'm saying? We're in a difficult situation. You're Merrick residents. You should be helping us. You should want us here doing this.
thank you. Thank you. Dr. Palmer, do you want to respond and then I will respond? Or I'm happy to respond.
Okay.
I'd rather hear from you,
I-
Nancy.
Yeah, I want to say this, and I have spoken to Katerina on probably 4 or 5 occasions. So let me just say this, and, I appreciate, you coming tonight. I think the board always.
I live with Katerina.
I know. I always appreciate when, and the board does, when community members come to share concerns with us. I do want to take exception to a couple of things, however. Number one, over the last week, I have heard different people say that the board does not care about the residents of Merrick. That could not be anything further from the truth. So I need to take exception to that.
Well, in our case, you're gonna have to show us.
Sir, let me just respond. A lot of the things that you brought up tonight, while frustrating and upsetting and absolutely and completely valid, have nothing to do with the Board of Education or the Merrick Union Free School District. What has to do with the Merrick Union Free School District is the issue that we thought you were coming to talk about solely, which was the property by Birch School.
Yes.
We have said from, and let me just say this, the board, every single conversation we have and every conversation the district has is guided by our school board attorney. We follow the law, we follow processes, we do everything absolutely and completely the right way.
That hasn't been the case.
I don't, and I'm not going to get into an argument with you. I'm responding. We have said We have said to the residents over and over that the situation over at Birch School right now has been exacerbated because we are in a pandemic.
No, that's not true.
Excuse me, may I respond?
I'm sorry.
We had.
You're being bad, very bad neighbors.
If you're not gonna let me, if you're not gonna let me respond, then I don't even have to comment.
We really have to talk truths
The
here.
reality is, this is your time to address the board. And if you'd like me to respond, I'm happy to do that. But if we're gonna get into an argument, I'm not going to respond.
Okay, okay.
The situation over at Birch School right now with the additional containers is as a result of the pandemic. We had to empty the school building out of existing furniture so that we can socially distance according to the law and regulation that we had to follow. Those are the 2 additional containers that are over there. There are extra vehicles over there that we are in the process of selling. So we expect that to get better in the short while. While I wish we could tell you that we can remove everything from the school property tomorrow, it's just not a reality. So I'm not gonna
But
lie.
we're not saying remove it from the school property. We're just saying remove it from that side. Why put it on Dobson Avenue, the most residential area of your school? It could be easily put in the back. You have so much more property. And I've been here for 25 years next to the school. And I've seen trailers back there and really never bothered anybody.
So I don't know that to be the case, but we will ask the superintendent to address that issue if it's possible. I want to ask you a question, right? We are as school board members, we are members of this community. We are your neighbors. We are volunteers. Why would you ever think that we would make decisions to purposely make neighbors unhappy?
Maybe
Wow.
not purposely, but we're just putting it out that it's a wrong decision.
We all appreciate that. The reality is we can only deal with the situation that we have been dealt. We've heard the concerns over and over. We've asked for patience. The reality is that those containers are not going away before this pandemic is over.
We're not talking about those 2 containers. We're not talking about those 2 containers.
So
This has been the issue. It's always obfuscation. We're talking about the minibuses, the white 53-foot shipping container, the fences around the minibuses, the fact that the minibuses never leave the dump truck between the 2 containers
And the snowplow.
and the snow plows. This, and now the addition of the green fencing, which allows more vandalism. Because we've heard from the neighbors that the minibuses have been vandalized.
So
You say you want to be a good neighbor, that's what you must do.
okay,
You
let me-
must be a good neighbor.
Let me say again, 2 of those buses are in the process of being sold.
For 3 years,
To address,
So for a very long period of time, and I'm sure everybody who lives across the street knows this, we've got less garages than we have minivans. We had a minivan, it was our spare minivan, which we were looking to replace. We're now in a situation where we're waiting. Jim, did we get delivery on the new one, or are we still waiting on the new?
The new one has arrived. It needs to get a radio put in it.
So we will be able, and on the agenda that the board just approved tonight, there is accessing, obsoleting 2 buses. So but there will be another brand new bus. So there'll still be more buses than there are garages. And you've witnessed that for many, many years. You know, Sid Freifeld is our interim business official who retired initially from the district 15 years ago. And she has reminded me that these situations existed long before I got here. So we are on the agenda is 2 buses and that truck to go. Also on the agenda is the contract with an auctioning company so that hopefully we don't just bring them to the scrap yard and get scrap money for them, but we can actually get some money. So those 3 vehicles are going to be gone, but there will be another bus. So understand, there will be a new bus.
we don't want the bus there.
Well,
You don't have a bus across the street from your house, do you? On the lawn across the street from your house?
well,
Palovich, you know what, Dr. Palmer, I'm just going to jump in. The board has heard your concern. We're going to do
And
the best we can do. And what I'm going to say to you is that we will continue to do the best that we can do, but it may never be that there will not be a school bus that you will see on school property. I would be lying to you.
it's not on school property that we object to. It's school property on the lawn of school property.
Okay, we have heard your concern.
I know, I can tell by your attitude, you don't want to listen. You don't want to do anything.
Sir, I'm not
I mean,
going-
you're on neighbors.
Dr.
You should want to
Kaplan,
help us, you know,
Dr. Kaplan,
another,
may I just say something for a minute?
Sure.
Dr. Kaplan?
Yes.
Yeah, hi. My husband and I, we moved to Merrick over 25 years ago. And we were newlyweds buying our first house. And we fell in love with the area and we raised two wonderful boys through the Belmore Merrick School District. And the boys used to call next door to us, the Birch Schoolyard, the Sandlot. And they would play for hours and hours with their neighbors, football, tossing a football or a baseball.
It was open space.
It was open space, beautiful green open space, and with their neighborhood friends. And to see it now is heartbreaking. You can't blame COVID for the disaster over there for the last 3 years. We've seen terribly dangerous play by other children jumping in and out of the school bus on top of container.
We called the cops.
And yeah, we had to call the police on one occasion because one of the boys jumped from the top and got hurt. And we're concerned about the safety because we know the children play there. And it's not conducive to safe play. We saw them shooting fireworks on top of the bus. The police actually came to our house and was concerned about that. And that's the reason I was concerned about safety as well. We saw the kids playing there, and that upsets me that it's not tossing a football anymore. It's not tossing a baseball. It's getting hurt and getting into trouble. So that was just what we wanted to share.
The school currently uses that open space during the good time, during the spring and fall.
Sure,
I see them out
the
there.
kids will come out with their classroom, the teachers will teach on the lawn, but it's getting less and less and less because of all these containers.
The board is going to continue to look at the issue to see if there are alternatives. I cannot promise you that there are, but
there are, I can tell you,
Sir, the conversation from my end is now.
It's over, right?
Have been
It's over.
heard. I appreciate you coming. We all do.
I don't think you do.
Thank you very much. Thank
We
you.
have to go to the media.
Okay, that brings us to.
Did Ms. Garvey have an opportunity to speak?
Just wanted to say one thing. First of all, I wanted to thank the board because I know you're all volunteers and
Thank you.
do appreciate that you volunteer your time. It's not easy and it's not fun. But I really can't add anything except that, yeah, I want to say what the other people said. Just if you think about if it was across the street from your kitchen window or, your living room, it's just very unappealing. So we really would appreciate it, whatever you can do, to mitigate it. And of course, obviously, anything that's got to do with COVID, that's a different kettle of fish. That's not the issue. That's not what people are concerned about. And what Joe is talking about, and I won't go into it because he did it in great detail, is that it's those incremental things. And if you don't address them, then you're sorry later. And you all live in Merrick. We all want it to be a beautiful town like it always has been. And that's all I wanted to say. But thank you again for your service.
Just to report to Belmore Merrick Central High School District board members. Gina, as president.
I'm sorry. I had to clarify something because we heard from the visitors. We've been sitting back for 10 minutes. I just have a couple of questions myself. Because I've been down to the area and I've looked at it. I see there's a couple of items on the excess list. Between the sheds, I know there's a bus that's off the road and there's one truck. Are those currently included in our excess list?
Yes.
Yeah, those are the items.
I'm asking Dr. Palmer, yes?
Yeah, Jim, yeah.
Okay, there is an additional bus that's on our excess list. Is that currently on the road? Which bus is that?
Jim?
It's bus 5, and yes, it is the spare bus that we use. But with the new bus coming online, that will now be accessed.
Okay, so bus 5 will be accessed. We have currently 8, 9, and 10 running. That's correct?
10 is not on the road yet. We have 7, 8, and 9.
Okay, so the bus that's currently on the lawn, the one that's it's actually not, it's in a gate that's between the permanent shed and the temporary shed. That's one of them that's being accessed, correct?
Yes,
Okay, and then there's a truck that's in between that and the 2 additional sheds that's being accessed, correct?
correct.
Okay, so now that's the bus and the truck that we are looking forward to leaving the area. And we
Correct.
expect to only have running buses near our school garage, correct?
Correct.
And we don't expect to have any buses parked on the lawn subsequent to that, correct?
The actual spare bus would still be in the gated area behind the garage.
The spare bus.
Yes,
Okay. When was that gated area put up?
when we put the tan pod in, we ran gates from the building, from the garage to the pod. Regulations require us to be 25 feet away. We thought that would be a good place that we could put the bus and prevent any further vandalism.
Okay. When we put, and I'm sorry for taking this time, but I just need clarification. When we put up the 2 temporary sheds, when were they put up?
August,
This past August.
correct.
And for what purpose were they put up?
To store materials out of the building that we had to remove because of COVID.
So everything that we currently have in those 2 additional sheds is due to the governor's regulations specific to COVID and so we can operate school.
Correct.
Okay, so as soon as the governor's regulations are no longer in effect, can we expect to empty those sheds out?
I expect that everything will go back into the buildings, yes.
Okay, so there's nothing additional that we would need to keep in those sheds after the regulations are done away with and we're back running normal.
Well, let me say that I will say that I am sure the building people will find a million things that they would want to store because there's never enough room in the building. But that's not our intention. Our intention is that they were brought in for the pandemic and that when we move furniture back into the school, they go away.
And we don't want to keep them. I mean, we don't want to pay for them either and have additional, we don't want it to look like an industrial park, but it seems to me that we need those sheds right now to store all the tables and the bookcases and the beanbag chairs and all the fun stuff that we use, for our kids' educational experience that we just can't use right now. I have no more questions. Thanks.
Gina, reports of high school board members? Oh, Gina's on mute. Brendan, can you?
Brendan's fixing it now. Actually, I think he's fixing it. Brendan, unmute the board.
You got it. Give me 1 second.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. The high school board meeting was last week, February 3rd. And at our board meeting, we appointed a new assistant superintendent of curriculum. His name is Scott Bernson. He comes from Seaford High School. He's the principal there. He interviewed beautifully, and we're looking forward for him to joining the Central High School District. We also approved our 2021 school calendar. And if you look at them both online, they coordinate pretty well with the elementary school, so we're very happy about that. Sports in the high school started today with basketball, wrestling, cheering, and kick line. The coaches are working very hard to keep everything pandemic friendly, I guess is the best way to say it. We are testing all of the athletes Wednesday and Saturdays. We hired a company to do that. Today was actually the first day of testing. We will be having results of that, but they tested most of the athletes today. What else is there? And as far as the COVID, we are still getting cases up at the high school, and we are contact tracing them with fewer quarantining going on compared to what we had after the holidays. And that's about it. So everything's running smoothly up at the high school.
Okay, thanks, Gina. Legislation?
Ryan and Dr. Palma, I believe, explained most of what's going on in terms of the budget. So I'll leave that as is. And just as always, write to your senators so that federal aid is sent to our states so that our budgets do remain as is.
Okay, thank you. Any reports of board members?
I
Okay.
just want to thank all the administrators and the teachers for doing such a fantastic job with the contact tracing. It was really hairy after the holidays, and we still managed to stay open, and it's so much work, and we just really appreciate everything you've been doing.
Ditto.
I have something. So when we were talking about retirements before, and I know we're getting a few retirements from teachers and staff in the middle of the year, I hope we can, I was mentioning it before, I hope we can acknowledge them somehow in June. I mean, we can't do it in person, I guess, but maybe we can figure out something on a way to acknowledge them at that time. But in the meantime, congratulations to the ones that retired recently. Thank you. Thank you. What's going on?
We hear you.
Nancy is muted. Brendan, Nancy's muted.
Thank you, Brendan. I'm not muted anymore. Any new business?
I just, two announcements. One, on the March board agenda, there'll be a section of public hearing. Back in the fall or so, there was legislation to require a addendum to the district safety plan that covers continuity of organizational operations during a public health emergency. So it's been posted on the website since February 1, draft of it that talks about more or less the many different ways that things can come into play depending on what the public health emergency may be. And really, it's kind of just an offshoot of what was part of our reentry plan. So that requires a public hearing. We'll open up the board meeting for a public hearing at that point if there's any specific comments on it, and then the board can approve it. And that's been in your hands for a while. And then the other thing I just wanted to put on the record is when we developed the calendar for the current school year, we didn't know when the BOCES budget and trustee vote would be. That is now scheduled for April 20th. So we would be holding a board meeting for the purpose of approving or reviewing the BOCES budget and trustee. And that's it.
Okay. Any old business? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? Second? Okay, have a great night, everyone.